In this demonstration, we will be walking through configuring RockSolid to automatically perform backups in your environment. In this demonstration, I have one instance being managed by RockSolid, and that one instance has 28 databases. Currently, there's no management on that instance at all. Now, while I could set up different schedules for each of the databases and different backup options, for this demonstration, I'm going to walk through setting a group level policy to apply a default backup regime across my environment. So the first thing I need to do is to go into my group and allow RockSolid to perform automated management. By default, automated management is turned off, and that means RockSolid cannot automatically carry out any activity in my environment. So I go into my group, I choose group settings, scroll down to allow automated management and set that to yes, and save those settings. Okay, now that I've allowed automated management, that in itself doesn't actually instruct RockSolid to perform any activity. It just allows automated management activities to occur if they are configured in my environment. So the next thing I need to do is to actually set a schedule for when backups should occur. Now I can apply this at any level in the hierarchy, whether it's at the group level, the instance level, or the individual database level. But as I'm setting up a global default policy, I'll apply it at the group level. So I go back into my group and go to the group calendar. Okay, here in the calendar is where I can configure a backup window. Okay, from my hours type, I select a backup window, and I want my backups to run between 8 and 11 each night of the week. Now I've just set a global everyday backup window between 8 and 11. If I was setting RockSolid up for all activities, I would actually set up all backup all hours type windows, such as normal business hours and maintenance windows and so forth. But for the purpose of this demonstration, as I'm only doing backups, I will only set up the backup window. Okay, so we've told RockSolid when the backup window is. We've told it to that it's allowed to do automated management. What we need to do now is configure the way in which backups run. So that, as that's a database level setting, we go and set it in our either on the database itself or in our database groups, our database buckets. Okay, so my databases are routed to this database group here, my production databases. Okay, so to allow backups to take place, we need to turn on auto backup management. This is a global switch that either allows or disables RockSolid from performing backup management. So as we want RockSolid to perform this function, we turn auto backup management to on. Okay, we still need to configure how we actually want those backups to occur. So we go to the recovery tab. Okay, and using the full backup plan, we can configure how we want RockSolid to perform the backup. So we need to set our full backup plan to yes. Okay, we leave our backup location to disk, our backup folder. Now if we don't specify anything here, RockSolid will just use the SQL Server default backup location. So we'll leave that blank. The backups to retain is the number of backups to keep under normal circumstances. So this is how many backups you want to keep on disk. So under normal circumstances, I'd like to keep 3 days backups on disk. Now the minimum backups to retain is how many backups you want to keep on disk if there isn't enough disk space to perform the next backup. So while under normal circumstances you may want to keep 3, if there isn't enough disk space available to actually keep 3, what is the level you would like to reduce it down to so you can get the next good backup? So I'll leave that at the default of 1. Backup, we can back up using SQL Server, Lightspeed, or Redgate. So I'm going to leave that set to SQL Server at the moment. Backup with multiple files. So I can tell RockSolid to stripe the backup files, stripe the backup across multiple files. Now RockSolid will do that when we configure a size. So we want to say use multiple backup files when the database is maybe 1 GB or more. So we don't want to create an administrative burden by creating lots of backup files for very small databases, as the reason why you stripe backups is for performance reasons. So RockSolid will create one backup file per CPU core up to a maximum of 8 when this option is enabled. Now the final option we need to specify here is immediate retention. What immediate retention means is, by default, if this option is disabled, if you want to keep 3 backups on disk, RockSolid will do the 4th backup and then remove the 1st backup. So the maximum number of backups it has on disks while it's actually doing the backup is 4, and once it's finished that 4th backup, it will delete the 1st one. Now if disk space is low, you might want to do it the other way around, which is what immediate retention does. It will delete the 1st backup before undertaking the 4th backup. So at the most backups that will ever be on disk is this backups to retain figure, but while the backups happening, essentially 2 will be on disk. As of disk space isn't a problem, I'm going to leave immediate retention off. Now the other option which we can use to help us reduce down the number of issues we have from backup is auto rerun backup. By default that's set to no. What this will do, if we set it to yes, if a backup fails for whatever reason, RockSolid will automatically retry that backup as long as the hours configuration in our calendar isn't normal business hours. So if it's outside of business hours and the backup's failed, RockSolid will periodically retry that backup to try and get a good backup. Now as we want that function enabled, we'll set that to yes. Once we've made those changes to our database bucket, then RockSolid will go off and set up the database maintenance planning and schedule the maintenance jobs. But before RockSolid can actually deploy any jobs to our environment, we must approve the change controls. Now if we look at the service requests, RockSolid will be raising service requests to actually deploy jobs into our environment. Those service requests are of the task type auto management jobs. And if we search for those types of tasks, ensuring that we've ticked assign to RockSolid, we should see some of those service requests being raised. Okay, now because these are change requests, by default RockSolid cannot automatically implement these changes. If we notice here that the change is pending approval. Now as we want RockSolid to automatically deploy these jobs and to maintain the schedules and automatically deploy updates without us having to manually apply change control, we'll set up an auto approval for these types of requests. So if we go into service requests, manage change control, the auto approval tab, and then for our group, the task auto management jobs, will add an auto approval for that and save those changes. Now it might take several minutes for these service requests to actually be created and for the change control to take effect. Depending on where RockSolid is in its planning cycle, that may be 5 or 10 minutes. So just if you've set all the configuration parameters as we've been through, in a few minutes those service requests will be raised, and once the change approval has been applied, then RockSolid will automatically deploy those changes to our instance. Okay, now we can see because we've applied that change approval, the type is now changed to change approved change. So now these are in position for RockSolid. They're assigned to the RockSolid agent, the change approved. So now RockSolid will pick these up and start implementing those jobs on our instance. When RockSolid begins deploying these service request tasks, it will change the status to in progress. So if we refresh, once we see these change to in progress, we know that RockSolid is in the process of deploying those jobs. Okay, so if we come to our job activity monitor and refresh this, then we can see that RockSolid has actually deployed those jobs to our instance.